She stood there, her fingers entwined with the brittle grass, as the last light of day draped a soft golden hue over the graveyard. It felt strange for him to be lurking in the shadows, watching her, yet he couldn't tear his eyes away. The world around him faded as if it were all just a backdrop to her quiet ritual. The air was thick with a mix of regret and reverence. Each grave she touched spoke in hushed tones. She worked gently under the fading light like a sculptor perfecting their craft, brushing away the dirt and debris that had settled over time. He felt the pull of curiosity outweigh any sense of intruding on her grief. Who was she? Why was she here alone? Then her movement stilled and he leaned in, barely breathing, the anticipation gripping him like a vice. She paused at a grave marked only by a crude stone, no name, no date. It was different from the others, an inconspicuous void standing defiant against time. She knelt there, her hands now resting on the stone, and whispered something words too soft to hear. He couldn't contain himself any longer. As if drawn by fate itself, he stepped into the open, branches cracking beneath his feet. She turned sharply, her eyes widening, caught like a deer in headlights. He raised his hands, palms outward. "I didn't mean to scare you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. After a moment, she seemed to gather herself, straightening up as if shaking off a lingering dream. "I come here often," she managed, her voice steady but laced with a quiet sadness that wrapped around him like a fog. He asked, captivated. Her gaze fell back to the blank grave. "To whoever lies here," she replied, her voice trembling ever so slightly. "It's empty now." Those words hung in the air, heavy with history. A sense of urgency pressed against him. He felt compelled to know what story lay buried beneath this unmarked stone. "What do you mean?" She exhaled sharply, a small shiver cascading through her. "It was my brother. His name was Thomas. The way she spoke, each syllable wrapped in layers of sorrow, painted a memory that clawed at his heart. He echoed, his curiosity burning brighter. "Yes," she said. "He was sick, very sick. Everyone said he wouldn't make it to his 8th birthday. But hope is a powerful thing, isn't it? I was young. I believed he would pull through." As she spoke, he could see the child in her, the girl who had spent countless days weaving castles in the air, only to watch them crumble under the weight of cruel reality. "I imagined us going to the beach, building sandcastles. I wanted to take him on adventures." She paused, the weight of the memory crushing her voice. They were final. The pang of empathy twisted in him, knowing all too well the roots of sorrow that could sprout from such love. He asked gently, It's all I can do," she replied, the fight in her voice almost breaking. "I'd hoped one day his spirit would find another resting place, but this grave is still empty." The silence wrapped around them, the quiet rustling of leaves punctuating the weight of her confession. He could feel her heartache, a shared sorrow that stretched beyond mere words. He pressed, drawn into her world where grief became a deeply woven tapestry. "Yes," she nodded, "to remind whoever might come that he lived, even if it was just for a fleeting moment." Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, and he found himself wanting to shield her from that pain. "You know, they say that the dead speak through the living. In a way, Thomas lives on in you." A small, fragile smile crept across her lips, a flicker of hope in the shadow of loss. Perhaps it was the power of connection, or perhaps it was the bond forged in sorrow. Either way, it felt electric, as if the air around them crackled with unspoken understanding. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice a soothing balm that wrapped around him. But as they stood there, the sun dipped below the horizon and an unsettling chill settled in. He shifted his weight, unease gnawing at him. "Can I ask you, if you come here so often, why don't you try to find out what happened?" Her smile faltered, replaced by an expression that invited dread. She murmured, confusion etched across her brow. "But isn't that part of healing?" The boldness of his words surprised even him. "I've looked," she said softly. "I've searched for answers like a sailor lost at sea. But what if I uncover something worse?" The stark honesty in her words penetrated the veil of their shared moment. Each grave they had walked past told a story, some joyful, some tragic. But this grave, empty and innocent, posed another question entirely. What lay beyond the veil of truth? Sometimes ignorance could cradle the heart in a way knowledge never could. "Across the world, we hold the stories of our loved ones close," he murmured, leaning against a nearby gravestone. Some we hide, some we cherish. As she stared at the emptiness before her, tears gathered in her eyes. But if I find nothing, I won't know how to move forward, she said, a hint of desperation coloring her words. The memory lives in you, he insisted, feeling his heart pound with the intensity of her longing. It's not the answers that give us strength, it's love. Moments shared, even the briefest brush with life. After a long pause, she released a shuddering breath, a reluctant resolve creeping into her posture. Let's find out together, he said, urging her into the unknown like an anchor in stormy seas. What's one more journey in finding your brother? The seconds stretched between them, a silent battle pulsing with choices and paths yet to be discovered. She bit her lip, drawing in a deep breath, the resolve flickering like a candle fighting the dark. Okay, she finally said, let's do it. And so they set off, weaving through rows of stone markers into a world filled with memories and echoes. The grass underfoot felt alive, whispering secrets long hidden, and as dusk encroached, the sky morphed into shades of indigo and twilight. He asked, breaking the silence that had returned like a long-lost friend. Lily, she replied, the name falling from her lips like a forgotten lullaby. Lily, beautiful name. I'm Lucas, he introduced, throwing her a reassuring smile. They walked side by side, and the air thickened with questions they had yet to voice. Lily asked, glancing around at the vast expanse of stone memorials. There must be records, a town archive, or maybe someone here knew your brother. Maybe the family that lived near you, Lucas suggested, his heart racing at the prospect of unraveling this mystery with her. No, her eyes drifted away. I was scared. I feared the answers would shatter the illusion I held. Her voice trembled, and he felt the weight of her choices reverberate in them both. Maybe, she admitted softly, uncertainty wrapped around her tone. He pressed gently, pushing her to step out of her comfort zone. Beyond this moment, beyond this time, lies a story waiting to be told. As they reached the outskirts of the graveyard, the moon began to rise, casting silver light on the headstones glimmering like specters of the past. With each step, they ventured closer to understanding, the air thick with promise. Finally, they reached an old community center, the kind whose doors creaked with stories and rickety chairs held the weight of countless shared moments. Inside, the smell of old paper and dusty books beckoned them forward. Lily paused before the door, brushing her fingers along the aged wood. Yep, Lucas replied, adopting a brave smile even as the unknown loomed before them. Together, they crossed the threshold into the world of dusty archives and untold stories. The atmosphere buzzed with the fervor of hope, intertwined with fear, a dance of anticipation enveloping their hearts. Hours passed as they combed through records, the weight of silence broken only by the turning of pages, until finally, beneath the burden of dust and forgotten tales, they unearthed a hidden gem, a name, a date, and a tragic history. Lucas watched as emotion washed over her, shape-shifting from joy to sorrow to an acceptance of the truth. The reality was a tangled web of love and loss, a family's sorrow etched in whispers across the years. Lily absorbed the bitter truth, feeling the pieces of her brother's life snap into place, a boy who lived a brief but bright existence, whose laughter had echoed like sweet music before it was silenced too soon. I didn't want this, she breathed, tears spilling down her cheeks. Lucas stepped closer, offering her a comforting presence. But you found him, didn't you? As they stood there, a sense of peace settled around them like warm sunlight breaking through the clouds. The void of that empty grave might remain, but it no longer bore the weight of silence. It instead echoed with memories, laughter, and whispered love. In that moment, as reality washed over her, it became clear. Love is a thread that binds souls, stretching across the expanse of time, reaching even the void of absence. And maybe, just maybe, it would guide her toward healing in ways she had never imagined. She looked up, meeting his gaze, tears still glistening in the moonlight. Thank you for letting me walk with you, Lucas replied, feeling a different kind of warmth swell in his heart. And together they forged a new path, one bound not by grief but by acceptance, love, and the undying stories of those no longer here. He found her in the fading light of dusk, crouched low among the gravestones, her delicate fingers brushing gently against the weathered surfaces. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth, and a chill set in as shadows began to stretch like ghostly fingers across the cemetery. He never intended to come here, but somehow, fate had led him to this moment, this haunting scene. Her movements were tender, almost reverent, as she placed a bouquet of wildflowers at each grave. The flowers, vibrant and full of life, contrasted sharply with the silence that enveloped the tombstones. He stood at a distance, feeling like an intruder in this sacred space, but curiosity rooted him to the ground. What compelled her to come here alone? Was she mourning someone who had passed, or was there something deeper at play? He could sense the weight of her sorrow, a palpable tension that hung in the air around her. His heart raced as he took a step closer, careful not to disturb the tranquility. That's when he saw it, the grave she hesitated at, an unmarked stone in the middle of the rows. No inscription, no name, just an empty place surrounded by flowers. It was different from the others, which bore names, dates, and loving messages etched into their surfaces. As she lingered there, he couldn't hold back any longer. "Excuse me," he called out, his voice tentative. She spun around, her eyes wide with surprise, and for a moment he feared he had gone too far. But there was something in her gaze, a blend of curiosity and softness, that encouraged him to step forward. "I didn't mean to interrupt you, A fleeting smile graced her lips, but sadness lingered in her eyes. "I'm okay," she replied, though her voice betrayed the truth. "Just old friends." He let those words sink in, feeling the weight of them. He asked, gesturing towards the empty grave. Her expression shifted. "This one," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "is my brother's, but he's not here." His heart twisted in his chest. The words felt inadequate, but he offered them anyway, hoping they might bring her some comfort. "Did he?" She nodded, the lump in her throat obvious. "He died when he was just a child." She paused, sorting through memories as if they were fragile leaves caught in the wind. "I come here often. I talk to him." He inquired gently, wanting to dig deeper but fearing to pry too much. "A long time," she repeated, her voice filled with a heaviness that seemed to echo through the cemetery. "Over 10 years. As she spoke, he found himself pulled into her world, a world built on love, loss, and lingering memories. He felt the ache of her heart, the longing for those moments lost. He asked, his curiosity getting the better of him. A wistful smile broke through her sorrow. Thomas was a dreamer. She glanced up at the evening sky, the first stars beginning to poke through the purple haze, and for a moment it felt as if they could both see him dancing among them. The scene painted itself vividly in Lucas's mind, an adventurous boy under a blanket of stars, eyes alight with wonder. "That sounds beautiful," he murmured. "Yes, until..." The shadows deepened around them as her voice faltered. Something cold gripped Lucas's chest. The thought of a life cut short, a future extinguished far too soon, sent shivers down his spine. He pressed. The question hung heavy in the air, filled with meaning that went beyond mere logistics. She sighed softly, her gaze lingering on the barren stone. "Because the truth is, we never buried him here. He's in a different place somewhere far away. Our family chose to keep his memory alive in this spot, as if to say he lived. But it feels..." There it was again, this sense of unresolved longing, of a space never truly filled, of an absence that clung to her very being. It felt as if the emptiness of the grave reflected her own heart. He suggested, his voice firm yet gentle. "Something to honor him, a marker maybe." "I've thought about it," she admitted, her eyes shimmering with an unspoken fear. "But what if it makes it too real? This emptiness feels safe somehow." Lucas felt the complexity of her struggle, how grief can twist reality into something manageable, a protective barrier against the heartache of acceptance. It gnawed at him. She was holding on so tightly to a ghost while running the risk of missing the life still surrounding her. "Sometimes facing reality helps us heal," he offered cautiously. "Perhaps letting go of this illusion could open up a new space for you." "I don't know if I'm ready for that," she whispered, biting her lip as fresh tears brimmed at the edges of her eyes. Lucas stepped closer, feeling a pull to comfort her. He saw how raw her emotions were, transforming her pain into an almost palpable force. "What if it brings you peace? What if you feel him even closer?" She looked at him then, searching his eyes as if hoping to find the answers to a question she had never fully formed. "I believe that love does not fade," he answered. We carry it with us, even amidst the pain. But letting go of physical remnants doesn't mean losing that love. Time hung heavy between them as dusk deepened into night, the moon casting silvery light across the gravestones. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves, and for a moment he thought he heard laughter, a soft echo of joy that resonated in the spaces around them. "I never thought of it that way," she said finally, the flicker of hope sparking in her eyes. With those words, a shift occurred in the air, an opening of possibilities where there had once only been shadows. He said, excitement bubbling within him. She asked, a newfound spark igniting in her voice. He suggested, feeling the warmth growing between them. "Something that thrives like a wildflower, maybe." "I like that idea," she replied, her smile growing. "It feels." They spoke late into the night, brainstorming ways to honor Thomas's memory. The cemetery transformed in the light of their hopes, the weight of sorrow becoming a bridge to connection instead of a wall. As the hour grew late, he helped her gather her things, and when the last remnants of twilight faded to black, they stood before the empty grave once more. He asked, the weight of his invitation resting softly in the air. "We could make a little ceremony around this, it could be." A slow smile crept across her face. "I'd like that," she said, a fresh light dancing behind her eyes. "Thank you for coming tonight." Their eyes met, a shared understanding swirling between them, a moment pregnant with the promise of healing and friendship. The weight of loss still lingered, yes, but within it lay a path glimmering with new possibilities. As they made their way back through the cemetery, the stars shone bright, winking down as if in agreement. For the first time, Lily felt the stirrings of hope rising in her chest. Perhaps it was time to let the winds of change sweep away the shadows, to embrace the living tapestry of memories that would forever bind her to Thomas. In the quiet of the night, surrounded by whispers of the past, she realized something profound: being brave doesn't always mean facing the darkness alone. Sometimes, it means finding a kindred spirit who can help you breathe life back into the places that once felt like home. And perhaps, through shared moments of love and remembrance, the emptiness could be filled, not with absence, but blossoming with the vibrant colors of a life well lived, a heart still beating in the echoes of their shared dreams. He found her there, kneeling among the weathered gravestones under a sky streaked with twilight. The soft glow of the setting sun cast long shadows, painting the cemetery in hues of gold and melancholy. Each grave stood like a silent guardian, holding stories of lives once lived, but one particular stone caught his eye. It was bare, unmarred by any inscription, an empty slate amidst a sea of memories. She moved gracefully from grave to grave, her fingers dancing over the stones, leaving wildflowers in her wake like gentle tokens of affection. As he watched her, he felt an urge to step closer, drawn not only by curiosity but by a profound sense of something heavier, something almost sacred. "Excuse me," he finally said, his voice breaking the quiet hush of the evening. She looked up, startled at first, her eyes wide and glistening. "I didn't mean to intrude, I just..." A soft smile appeared on her lips, but sadness lingered in her eyes. "You're not intruding, just..." Her voice was steady yet tender, the kind that told stories of lost love and lingering sorrow. He asked, gesturing toward the empty grave, his heart racing a little. The moment felt suspended in time, as if the very air around them held its breath. Her expression shifted, the smile fading slightly. She looked at the unmarked stone, and he could see the weight of memories pressing on her heart. "This is my brother's grave," she said, almost too quietly. "But he's not really here, The words struck him like a bolt of lightning. "I'm so sorry," he replied, sincerity flooding his voice. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "His name was Thomas. He died when he was just a little boy." Her words tumbled out, each one weighed down by the hurt of 1,000 unspoken thoughts. "I come here a lot." As evening settled around them, shadows deepened, creating a sense of intimacy and urgency. He asked softly. "It's complicated," she admitted, her voice breaking slightly. "My family couldn't bear to have him buried in the ground where he died, so we chose this spot to honor him, even though it's..." He couldn't shake the feeling of sorrow that enveloped them like a dark cloud. "But it feels so hollow," he offered gently. "What if you put something here?" Her eyes glistened with a mix of hope and fear. I've thought about it, she said, her breath catching. But what if it makes it too real? It feels safer to keep him this way, like he's just waiting. Sometimes, he replied, a quiet resolve forming in his chest. Letting go is the path to healing. Her gaze flickered between the empty grave and his inviting smile, uncertainty evident in her eyes. She looked deep in thought, perhaps weighing the weight of loss against the possibility of healing. What if I can't do it? You're not alone in this, he reassured her, stepping slightly closer. Maybe it's time to let the world know he existed. Silence wrapped around them as golden light faded into darkness, and she finally nodded, a small flicker of determination lighting her features. Okay, she whispered, her fingers brushing the unmarked stone. Let's create a space for him, something vibrant, something alive. His excitement surged as they began to brainstorm together, visions of growth and remembrance intertwining. I like that idea, she said, her voice growing firmer. And so they made a plan, a shared dream. In the days that followed, they met again at the cemetery, armed with a small potted plant, a bright yellow daisy that seemed to radiate joy. As she carefully planted it at the foot of the empty grave, she looked up at him, a newfound light sparking in her eyes. I want him to thrive, to be remembered in color, she declared, a smile breaking through her tears. He watched as her fingers brushed the petals with utmost care, almost as if she were touching his very soul. The gravestone was still empty, but now it felt filled with potential, a chance for healing through love and remembrance. The days turned into weeks, and each time they met, she filled the surrounding area with more flowers, a small rainbow of colors springing forth to symbolize the life Thomas never fully lived but still resonated deeply within her. As they tended to the growing garden, their bond blossomed too. They shared stories, hers of laughter and lost dreams, and his of struggles and triumphs, forging an unexpected friendship amidst the ashes of loss. Tending to Thomas's empty grave became a ritual, a ceremony of healing where they laughed, cried, and celebrated the essence of life that transcended even death. One afternoon, as they sat beneath an oak tree in the cemetery, she turned to him, her eyes shining. I feel him here, she said softly, a peaceful smile gracing her lips. Every time I look at the flowers, I remember him, not just for the loss, but for how he made me feel. Exactly, he nodded, sharing in her revelation. But as life blossomed around the empty grave, something unexpected took root within her, an urge to explore her past, to uncover the stories that had remained buried alongside her brother's memory. I want to know more about Thomas, she said one day, determination threading through her voice. Excitement surged in him. That's a wonderful idea. Let's do it together. We can visit your family, ask old friends. As they dug deeper, a world unfolded before them, a tapestry of memories interwoven with laughter and love. They retraced steps through their town, meeting family members who shared stories of Thomas's playful antics, his laughter echoing through the years. With every revelation, every memory recounted, she felt the weight of loss begin to lift, replaced by a vibrant mosaic of a boy bursting with life. One afternoon, they stumbled upon a narrow shop filled with trinkets and old photographs, the air thick with nostalgia. An elderly woman behind the counter recognized Lily's last name and lit up with warmth. Your brother was a bright light in this community, but I don't know much about him, Lily admitted shyly, her cheeks flushing. The woman took her hand, smiling kindly. Let me tell you, he brought joy to everyone. There was this time he organized a treasure hunt, gave clues, made maps, everyone joined in. With each shared story, she felt as if Thomas was reaching out to her, confirming that their bond still existed beyond the grave. It resonated with her, amplifying the joy that had once surrounded him. He sounds so alive, she said quietly, eyes glistening. The old woman nodded, her eyes brimming with shared nostalgia. He was alive. After that day, a new light ignited within Lily. She understood that while the empty grave had once represented the void of loss, it could now also symbolize the boundless potential to remember, to celebrate, and to carry forth the memories of those we love. Each story they uncovered became a thread, weaving a beautiful tapestry she could hold close. Lucas watched in awe as the transformation happened before his eyes. The grief that had once weighed so heavily on her heart began to lift, replaced with an understanding that healing is a journey, not a destination. As summer dipped into autumn, the flowers around the empty grave flourished, a vivid testament to the love she carried. The cemetery transformed into a vibrant place where laughter blended with stillness, where stories intertwined with respect, and where she finally felt her brother's presence blooming anew. One day, as they knelt together to tend to the gravesite, Lily turned to him, her expression earnest. "I could never have done this without you." Their bond had deepened in ways neither had expected, as if the act of nurturing the grave had nurtured their own souls. "All I did was walk with you," he replied, a warm smile spreading across his face. "You opened the door." And in that moment, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in dazzling colors, they both understood a profound truth: love transcends loss. The empty grave became a symbol of transformation, a canvas where memories could thrive and grow, echoing with laughter, life, and the power of shared stories. Lily understood that past and present could coexist, each telling a tale worth remembering. As the shadows stretched and the stars began to twinkle, she could finally breathe, exhaling the burdens of her grief. And with the promise of new beginnings, she and Lucas continued to nurture not just the flowers at the grave, but the friendship that had bloomed so unexpectedly in the heart of sadness, affirming the unending power of love to heal. He found her kneeling among the gravestones, her fingers brushing against the cool, moss-covered stones as the last light of day began to dim. The sun cast a warm, golden hue over the cemetery, creating a surreal glow that felt almost as if it were holding its breath. Tension filled the air, thick and palpable, as he watched her move from grave to grave. There was something intimate about the way she tended to each one, softly placing wildflowers as if they were fragile treasures. He paused, remaining hidden behind a tree, intrigued and somewhat entranced. Who was she? Why was she here, alone in this quiet graveyard that felt so heavy with memories? With each gentle stroke of her hand, he sensed that the stories of those buried here were coming alive again, but it was the absence of a name that drew him in, the unmarked grave at the very center of her attention. As she reached the empty stone, her movements stilled, and a heavy silence wrapped around her. He felt his heart race, an unsettling knot forming in his gut. Why was it empty? Who had this spot once belonged to? Unable to resist any longer, he crept closer, stepping onto the worn path that led him right beside her. "Excuse me," he said softly, the words feeling like a fragile thread woven into the fabric of the evening. She turned sharply, her eyes wide with surprise, holding a mixture of vulnerability and strength in that instant. "Oh, I didn't hear you come up," she replied, her voice steady but trembling, revealing traces of the sadness that danced just beneath the surface. His heart sank with the weight of her admission. "I'm really sorry," he said gently. "Not exactly," she murmured, her eyes drifting back to the bare stone. "This is supposed to be his spot. My family decided to keep a marker for him here even though we didn't bury him anywhere. It just feels." He asked cautiously, the curiosity threaded with sympathy, trying to understand her pain. She hesitated, biting her lip as tears threatened to spill from her eyes. "He died when he was just a boy." Her voice quaked with the weight of those words. "I come here to talk to him more than I can share with anyone else. It's like..." He watched her closely, feeling like an intruder into a world wrapped in both love and sorrow. "He did. He was my little brother," she said, her gaze losing focus as memories washed over her. "His name was Thomas, full of life, dreams bigger than the sky." The simplicity of her pain struck him deeply. Her grief painted a picture he could scarcely fathom. "Have you thought about putting something here?" She turned to him, surprise flickering in her eyes, followed by uncertainty. "I have, but what if it makes it too real? What if seeing something here makes me let him go?" "It might not be so scary," he offered gently, searching for the right words. "Sometimes holding on to a place can keep us trapped in grief." The air thickened as she considered his words, the silence stretching between them filled with unspoken emotions. Finally, she looked around, as if weighing her options against the countless stones that surrounded them. "What if I put a flower here?" "A flower sounds perfect," he encouraged, sensing the shift within her. "Something bright and full of life." With her decision made, the atmosphere around them shifted, a mix of hope and heartache vibrating in the air. "Yes," she whispered, stepping up to the nearest flower shop she knew of in town the very next day, her heart racing with anticipation. They spent that afternoon choosing the perfect flower, debating colors, size, and meaning with the kind of enthusiasm that felt almost foreign after so much time spent in sorrow. After picking out a vibrant daisy, she felt a flicker of excitement bloom within her chest. "This one will thrive," she said, determination seeping into her voice. In the days that followed, she returned to the graveyard with the flower. Together, they dug into the earth, carefully planting the daisy at the foot of the empty grave. As she stepped back, an unexpected rush of emotions washed over her, grief combined with a sense of freedom. "I can see him now," she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks, but this time they weren't solely tears of sadness. There was a sense of connection, a lifeline to the past. "Every time you come back, you'll see him bloom," he said, feeling a sense of reverence for their little ceremony. "He's not gone." Days turned into weeks, and every visit became a ritual. The daisy began to flourish in the sunlight, vibrant and lively, the heart of Thomas shining brightly in its petals. The cemetery transformed around them as they nurtured the empty grave, filling it with life rather than sorrow. With each visit, the stories of Thomas expanded. They shared childhood memories, dreams never realized, a laughter that echoed a little louder with every flower that grew. It was in those quiet moments, kneeling side by side in the grass, that she found herself shedding layers of grief. She transformed the weight of loss into the power of remembrance. There was a profound sense of acceptance in her voice, as if the colors of her grief were finally blending into a beautiful palette of memories. But just when she thought she had found equilibrium, darkness crept in. Doubts surfaced, tainting her newfound joy. "What if I forget him?" "Memory is a fragile thing," he replied, his voice steady, "but love doesn't fade. You carry him with you." She pondered his words while tending to the daisy, and in that moment a profound revelation struck her. Maybe forgetting is part of letting him go. The days grew shorter and the seasons began to change, but the bond between them only flourished. She realized that the empty grave, once a source of unbearable pain, had become a place of connection, a space where she could mourn and celebrate, where memories intertwined with the present. One chilly evening, as autumn leaves rustled around them, she turned to Lucas, her heart brimming with gratitude. "Thank you for being here with me," she said softly, sincerity lacing her words. "But you did the work," he replied, a gentle smile spreading across his face. "You opened that door." With each passing visit, they continued to tend to the daisy, adding more flowers around the gravestone, vibrant marigolds, delicate lavender, cheerful sunflowers, turning the space into a canvas of memories, alive and radiant. But there was still that empty stone, a reminder of everything that had once been, a gentle nudge towards acknowledging the past without being imprisoned by it. Then one gray afternoon, as they sat together beneath the branches of the lone oak tree, Lily broached a thought that had been brewing in her heart. She proposed, her eyes brightening. "What if we create a gathering?" Lucas's eyes widened with excitement. "That would be beautiful, a place where people can come together to remember, to celebrate their loved ones." And so, the wheels began to turn. They spent weeks planning, reaching out to neighbors and friends, spreading the word. On a chosen day, the sun emerged, breaking through the clouds as if welcoming the event itself. As families gathered in the cemetery that morning, the air buzzed with palpable energy. Each person brought something special, a flower, a photo, a memory. Lily stood among them, her heart swelling as stories poured forth. Laughter intertwined with tears, a beautiful tapestry of shared experiences that honored the lives they had lost. She felt Thomas's presence around her, filling the empty space with warmth. "Thank you for being here," she whispered, holding the daisy tightly in her hands. At the end of the gathering, as the sun began to set, Lucas stood beside her. "You did this," he said softly, glancing around at the smiles and tears mingling in the fading light. With a newfound sense of purpose, she turned toward the empty grave, now filled with light and love. "It's not really empty anymore," she said, her voice steady. "It's a space for hope." And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting its last golden rays, she felt the weight of grief balance against the buoyancy of life, a reminder that love endures beyond loss. The grave, once a silent echo of absence, had transformed into a vibrant celebration of memories, bridging stories with the present. In that moment, she understood that while pain had once held her captive, she had found freedom in love, in connection, and in the willingness to embrace both the joy and the sorrow. With Lucas by her side and her brother's spirit blooming in the flowers, she realized that they had forged something beautiful, an unwavering bond that transcended even the emptiest of graves. He found her on a crisp autumn evening, the kind where the sun dips low, casting long shadows across a patchwork of leaves crunching underfoot. She was kneeling beside a gravestone, her hands moving carefully over the surface, as if coaxing the stories of the dead to rise back up into the world. With each gentle stroke, she placed vibrant flowers, daisies, marigolds, and sunflowers on the grave. He stood at the edge of the cemetery, a hesitant observer caught off guard by the sincerity of her actions. It was odd to see someone here, so late in the day, in the fading light that seemed to hold its breath for the approaching night. There was a certain weight to the air, a quiet that enveloped her like a shroud. Curiosity drew him closer, yet he lingered just out of reach, respecting her solitude while desperately wanting to understand her story. As she moved to a different stone, he noticed there was one grave, central and bare, marked only by a rough-hewn rock. No name, no date, an unfamiliar emptiness amidst the others, which were adorned with caring messages from family and friends. His heart raced as he felt an inexplicable pull toward that empty grave. What had happened there? Who had been lost? As a soft breeze rustled the dying leaves, he stepped forward from his hiding spot, the sound of twigs snapping underfoot shattering the stillness. She turned at the sound, her eyes widening with surprise. "I didn't mean to disturb," he said, hands raised in an attempt to show he meant no harm. "I just..." Her expression softened, a fragile smile curling on her lips, but he could see the sorrow lurking behind her eyes. "I'm okay," she replied quietly, glancing back at the gravestones. "Just..." He felt an ache of compassion. "That's kind of you," he replied gently. "This one looks..." He pointed to the unmarked stone and her gaze followed. "It is," she said, hesitance coating her words. He asked, intrigued and heartbroken all at once. "His name was Thomas," she said, her voice trembling. "He died when he was just a child." The words hung in the air, heavy like a stone sinking into water. "I'm so sorry," he replied, feeling the gravity of her loss wash over him. "Yeah," she nodded, wiping a stray tear from her cheek. "I try to keep his memory alive." He understood then in a way that touched an unspoken part of him. The loss of a sibling, the emptiness that this sacred space failed to fill. He asked softly, hoping to peel back the layers of her grief. "He was taken from us too soon," she said, her voice breaking a little. "We couldn't bear the thought of burying him where he died. The family decided this spot would be his. There was something haunting about that empty grave, a missed opportunity for closure, for healing. Have you thought about putting something here?" "I want to," she admitted, her eyes flickering with uncertainty. "But what if that makes it too real? This emptiness feels safe." "Sometimes facing reality can be freeing," he suggested, his heart racing with the urgency of wanting to help. "What if you let him be remembered here?" She looked at him, searching his gaze for understanding. "I do," he said, feeling the weight of his own sincerity. "It can be a solid way to celebrate his life, not just mourn his passing." As she turned back to the empty grave, he could see her contemplating, processing the enormity of what that decision would entail, embracing loss while allowing new memories to take form. The silence stretched, wrapping around them, pressing against their hearts. "Maybe," she whispered finally, her voice growing stronger. "What if I brought a flower?" he exclaimed, heartened by her changing tone. "A flower can symbolize life. It can bloom, grow, it can represent who he was." Her eyes brightened with the spark of hope. "I like that idea," she said, determination weaving into her voice. And so it was set. The following day they ventured to a local shop, her heart racing with anticipation. Together they picked out the perfect flower, a single vibrant daisy, a wildflower that seemed to sing with energy and life. "I'll plant it here," she said, holding the daisy close as if it were made of glass. "This will be his marker." As they planted the daisy at the foot of the empty grave, she felt an overwhelming rush of emotions. The simple act held so much weight, almost transforming the space around them. "I can feel him here," she murmured, tears glistening as their laughter resonated through the trees, melding with the sound of rustling leaves. With each visit, she tended to the daisy, watering it, nurturing it. The flower became a part of her routine, blossoming under the sun, reaching toward the sky. A symbol of resilience in the face of unimaginable heartache. And with every passing day, their bond grew stronger. They shared stories, her memories of Thomas, bursting with laughter and joy, and Lucas's tales of adventure and discovery. He became a kindred spirit who helped her navigate through her living grief. One evening, as they sat beneath the canopy of stars, a gentle breeze wrapping around them, Lily said, "It feels like I'm finally learning to let go, but not really letting go." "You're carrying him with you," Lucas replied, his voice soft and reassuring. "It's part of honoring who he was." But as much as she learned to embrace her brother's memory, shadows of doubt occasionally crept in. She confessed one evening, the vulnerability evident in her voice. "Even if that happens, the love you feel for him is what truly matters," Lucas said gently. Tears brimmed at the edges of Lily's eyes. "Thank you for always being here," she whispered, feeling the weight of her gratitude in the space they shared. As time rolled on, autumn faded into winter, and the cemetery transformed. The daisy stood strong amidst the frost, a beacon of resilience against the stark landscape around them, reminding her that life, in all its fragility, still continued to bloom. One gray afternoon, as snow began to blanket the earth, they sought warmth indoors at a nearby cafe. The comforting scent of coffee and pastries enveloped them as they exchanged stories by the window, but the growing chill outside began to weigh on Lily. "Maybe I need to do more," she mused aloud, stirring her drink. "What if we expand this?" Lucas suggested, his eyes lighting up with enthusiasm. The idea ignited a fire within her. "Yes." Together they planned, reaching out to friends and families in the community. They spread the word through social media, igniting a spark in people's hearts. As the date approached, anticipation and excitement buzzed in the air, blending with the tranquil spirit of the cemetery. Finally, the day arrived. As the sun peeked through the winter clouds, people gathered in the cemetery, warmth blooming even in the cold. Families came with flowers in hand, ready to share their stories, their laughter framing the somber beauty of the setting. Lily stood at the front of the gathering, heart racing. "Thank you all for being here," she said, her voice steady yet trembling with emotion. As people began to speak, sharing their own stories of loss and love, the atmosphere transformed. Laughter intertwined with tears as the tales flowed, creating a sense of community and understanding among them all. Lily saw her brother's daisy standing tall, surrounded by a vibrant spectacle of flowers honoring those lost. It felt like a radiant garden of memory, where pain and love coexisted beautifully. Every word spoken was a tribute, every flower placed a reminder that love endures. "Remember," Lily said, her voice calming as she addressed the crowd, "we carry those we've lost within us." As reverent silence fell after the stories had been shared, she glanced at Lucas, who stood proudly beside her. "Thank you for walking this path with me," she whispered. He nodded, his eyes sparkling with admiration. "You did this, Lily." As the sun dipped lower, spilling golden light across the cemetery, an overwhelming sense of peace washed over her. The empty grave was no longer a painful reminder. It was a space filled with love and joy, nurturing those memories that would never fade. In that moment, she understood that grief is not linear. It ebbs and flows, intertwining with life as love transcends the boundaries of existence. The daisy, once just a flower, had transformed into a symbol of resilience, growth, and connection. While Thomas remained absent from this world, he lived on through the laughter at the gathering, through the flowers planted in his memory, and within the hearts of those who loved him. The empty grave, now vibrant with life, captured the essence of what it meant to truly honor a cherished soul. And as the night closed in, the stars began to twinkle, the air filled with whispers of the past and promises of tomorrow. She felt a sense of gratitude wash over her, knowing that though loss had brought heartache, it had also led her to this. this beautiful community, this garden of memories where love continued to thrive amidst the shadows of grief. He found her on the edge of dusk, shoulders hunched over an unmarked grave in the cemetery. The sun had dipped low, painting the sky in melancholic shades of orange and purple, casting long shadows that danced over rows of weathered stones. She knelt, her fingers trembling as she gently brushed the dirt away from the neglected grave. It felt like a tender act, her movements slow and deliberate, as if trying to coax the spirits of the past to rise from their slumber. Intrigued, he stepped closer, heart pounding in his chest. He had come to this place for solitude, seeking a quiet escape from the noise of life, but now he found himself drawn into her world, one dominated by grief, love, and shadows of memory. As he approached, the stillness enveloped him, wrapping around them like a dense fog. It felt wrong to intrude, yet he couldn't help but wonder why she was here, tending to a grave that bore no name. He asked, his voice barely above a whisper, as if raising it would shatter the moment. She looked up, her eyes shimmering like dew-kissed petals. "I come here every week," she replied, her voice steady but laced with sorrow. He felt a jolt in his gut at her words. She nodded, glancing again at the empty stone. His name was Daniel. The question slipped out, but it felt necessary, filled with an urgency that pressed upon him. He wanted to grasp the enormity of what lay beneath the surface. 8, she answered, her gaze distant, lost in thoughts only she could see. He was full of life. A silence stretched between them, the weight of her loss lingering in the air. "I'm so sorry," he said softly, wishing he could take away the pain that danced behind her eyes. Her lips quirked into a small, sad smile. "Thank you." She reached down to adjust the flowers in the small vase. She had brought a bouquet of daisies, spontaneous and bright, their color vibrant against the muted backdrop. He asked, motioning to the empty stone, "Doesn't it feel?" A cloud of emotion passed over her features. A storm of sorrow gathered behind her eyes. "I don't know," she whispered, shaking her head. "We buried him elsewhere, but this is the place I chose to remember him." He watched the intricate dance of her emotions, a mixture of resolve and grief, longing and pain. It was clear that this empty grave represented something more than just a physical marker. It was a canvas of memories, a space reserved for love that never dimmed. He suggested tentatively. Her eyes widened and shame flickered across her face. "I don't know if I could do that," she said, her voice barely audible. "What if it makes it too real? Facing reality can sometimes lead to healing," he said gently, feeling the urge to guide her through this delicate moment. "This empty space can hold memories without the weight of loss." As the sun began to set, casting its last rays onto the earth, she pondered his words, their power lingering in the air. He could see the flicker of hope battling against the shadows of her doubt. She said tentatively, her voice brightening just a little. He enthused, encouraged by her shift. "A flower can symbolize growth and joy." She stared at him, a spark igniting in her eyes. "You're right, I need this." Days slipped by like beads on a string as they planned for their small memorial. They ventured together to the local flower shop, each step echoing with purpose. Once there, they wandered through the aisles, their fingers trailing over the petals as they discussed the best blooms to represent Daniel. Ultimately, they chose a bright yellow daisy, the kind that seemed to shout hope and happiness in the face of sorrow. As she planted the daisy by the unmarked stone, a wave of emotions washed over her. For the first time, she felt a shift. "It feels so right," she breathed, wiping away tears as they watered the flower together. The daisy began to bloom, reaching for the sky, vibrant and full of life. She tended to the flower with dedication, visiting every week, nurturing it with love, her connection to her brother growing stronger with every drop of water. Days turned into weeks and they shared stories, her memories of Daniel's laughter filling the air, and the feeling of joyous innocence that marked their days together. He became fascinated by her tales of adventures and wild imaginations sparked in childhood. One afternoon, as the sun cast a warm glow over the cemetery, she turned to him. "Talking about him like this makes me feel lighter," she confessed, a gentle smile forming. "That's the beauty of love," he replied, feeling a warmth spreading through him. "It transcends even death." But as the seasons changed and the leaves turned, so too did her emotions. Despite the growth of the daisy, she occasionally felt shadows creeping back in. She admitted one evening her voice barely above a whisper. "Even if that happens," he reassured, "the love you feel doesn't fade. It lives through the stories you share, through the flowers you plant." Her eyes glistened with tears, and he saw the struggle within her. "I fear forgetting the details, the laughter," she said, the vulnerability raw in her voice. "But you won't forget," he said, his voice steady. "What matters is the love that remains." Time passed seamlessly, and with every visit to the grave, they grew closer, their bond deepening through shared tales and daring vulnerabilities. They transformed the cemetery into their own sacred space, a place where sorrow was met with resilience, where love thrived amidst loss. One chilly afternoon, as winter crept in, she turned to him. She suggested. The light in his eyes reflected her excitement. That would be beautiful, a celebration of the lives past. And so, they plotted and planned, reaching out to friends and family, sharing the idea of a community memorial that would embrace love and loss. The date was set, and anticipation filled the air as whispers of the event spread throughout the town. On the chosen day, the sun broke through the clouds, casting radiant rays over the cemetery. People arrived, flowers in hand, hearts filled with the desire to share and connect. Lily stood before the gathering, a gentle nervousness fluttering in her chest. Soon, the warm sun and the sound of laughter comforted her. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. As people started to share their stories, the atmosphere transformed. Laughter intertwined with tears, filled with beautiful resilience. They stood among the flowers, telling tales of their loved ones, each one celebrating beautiful lives that had shaped their hearts. Lily looked at the daisy standing lush and tall, surrounded by a sea of blooms, marigolds, sunflowers, and delicate lavender, a colorful testament to the lives once lived. The garden blossomed with stories, with memories that merged into a vibrant narrative of love. As the event drew to a close and shadows stretched long across the ground, a peaceful sense of fulfillment washed over her. "Thank you for sharing," she said, her eyes glistening with both gratitude and joy. Lucas stood beside her, pride lighting up his eyes. "You did this," he whispered, admiration pouring from his voice. In that moment, Lily realized that the empty grave was no longer a hole of despair. It had transformed, filled with love, laughter, and shared stories that would continue to echo long after the sun set. The memory of her brother, Daniel, intertwined with every shared experience, binding them together across the invisible threads of life and loss. In the weeks that followed, the cemetery thrived with life, as people came together to share freely, bringing blooms that reflected their own stories. The daisy kept blooming as if in inspiration, reminding everyone that love and memory can flourish even in the face of sorrow. As winter turned to spring, the flowers bloomed again in a chorus of colors, symbolizing hope anew. Lily felt renewed dreams rise within her, dreams of honoring Daniel not just here, but in everything she did each day. Standing at the edge of the grave, she whispered to the wind, "Thank you for reminding me that love never dies." And as the daisies danced in the breeze, she understood that grief is an eternal journey, a path that circles back to love, pulling her and all those around her into a beautiful tapestry of connection. The empty stone was no longer just a reminder of loss. It was a celebration of the enduring spirit of those she cherished. They lived on through her, carried in her heart, and reflected in the garden of memories they continued to nurture together. He found her kneeling in the soft earth of the cemetery, surrounded by gravestones illuminated by the golden light of the setting sun. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and wildflowers, intertwining with the bittersweet echo of memories that hung like mist over the plots. There was a stillness to the scene that called to him, a tranquility interrupted only by her gentle movements as she carefully placed flowers at each grave. He hesitated at first, his footsteps muffled by grass as he observed this quiet ritual. She was completely absorbed, her fingers brushing delicately against the cold stones as if she were awakening those who lay beneath. There was a haunting beauty to her dedication, a silent atonement that radiated from her very being. But as he shifted, trying to get a better look, he noticed something odd. A single grave, unmarked and bare, stood at the center of her focus. No name, no dates, just an empty stone, a hollow reminder of a life unlived that seemed to call out like a siren. The contrast was jarring against the vibrancy of the flowers she had placed around it. What did this grave represent? Who did it belong to? Unable to stay hidden any longer, he stepped forward. "Excuse me," he said, his voice breaking the sacred silence like a pebble thrown into still water. She startled, turning toward him with wide eyes, a mixture of surprise and vulnerability washing over her. "I didn't mean to disturb you," he continued, raising his hand slightly as if to signal his peaceful intentions. She took a moment to gather herself, a tentative smile hinting at the corners of her lips. "I'm all right," she replied softly, glancing back at the graves. He asked, pointing to the empty grave. Her expression faltered, a flicker of sadness dancing in her eyes. "This one is different," she said, her voice almost a whisper. His heart sank. "I'm so sorry," he said, sincerity flooding his tone as he instinctively took a step closer. "He died when he was just a child," she replied, the words tumbling out in a rush as if revealing a hidden truth she had carried for too long. "His name was Ben." He asked, wanting to understand the depth of her grief, the love encapsulated in that empty stone. A small smile broke through her sadness as her eyes misted over. "He was full of life," she remembered, her voice warming as she painted the picture. "Always laughing, always searching for adventure. We used to play in the fields behind our house, pretending we were explorers on a grand quest. He had a spirit that." He pressed gently, his voice soothing but inquisitive. Her gaze fell back to the unmarked stone, and he could almost see the memories collapsing upon one another in her mind. "He's not buried here. The family thought it best to lay him to rest far away, somewhere we could forget the pain of his loss. But I can't. I come here to remember him." His heart ached for her. He understood that grief often manifested in the most unexpected ways. He suggested, his mind racing with possibilities. A marker, maybe a flower. The suggestion hung in the air, heavy with potential. She looked at him, uncertainty flickering across her features. "I've thought about it," she murmured, her voice trembling with vulnerability. "But what if it makes it too real? Sometimes facing the truth can be freeing," he said gently. Her eyes widened slightly, taking in his words. "I do," he replied, grateful for the chance to impart hope. "A flower, a small marker, something to remind you of him." She took a deep breath, weighing the possibility. "Okay," she whispered finally, a flicker of hope igniting. With that promise hanging lightly in the air, he offered her a tentative smile. "Emily," she replied, her smile widening as the burden of her grief began to lighten just a bit. "Nice to meet you, Emily," he said, extending his hand as if making a promise to take part in her journey. After that day, Jake felt drawn back to the cemetery. Despite initially seeking solace himself, he found solace in the connection they were forging. Emily continued to visit the empty grave, having made the decision to plant a flower as a marker of her brother's spirit. Each time she came, she tended to the empty stone, nurturing it with care and love. On a bright afternoon, she steeled herself and took the next step, arranging to bring a bright yellow daisy, a flower that symbolized cheerfulness and hope. "It fits him," she told Jake as they walked through the cemetery. As they planted the daisy that day, Emily felt a rush of emotions, a wave of catharsis washing over her. "I finally feel like I can celebrate him," she said, her voice trembling. "Of course he is," Jake assured her, kneeling beside her as they watered the daisy together. Weeks passed and the daisy began to flourish, vibrant and strong, stretching toward the sun, brightening the empty grave. Emily's heart swelled with joy as she watched it thrive. Each visit was a step toward healing, a gentle reconciliation with her past. But along with the surge of happiness came moments of despair. Thoughts of loss would slip in like shadows, whispering fears of her brother being forgotten. One chilly evening, she confided in Jake as they sat together beneath the canopy of stars. "What if I forget him? Memories can fade," he admitted, "but love doesn't. You carry him with you in everything you do." Emily listened to his words, feeling a pull in her heart, the comforting truth nestling in. Maybe this journey isn't just about grief. As the seasons changed, the daisy remained a beacon of hope for Emily. It served as a reminder not only of Daniel but of life, of the people who continue to bloom in their own ways. Emily made it a ritual to visit the daisy every week, spending time under the expansive sky, nurturing it and sharing stories with Jake. The bond between them blossomed like the flowers they tended to, further entwined through their shared act of remembrance. They became confidants, partners in discovering the intricacies of loss and finding beauty in vulnerability. Then, one sunny afternoon, something within Emily shifted. "I want to create something bigger," she said, a spark igniting in her eyes. "What if I hold a community gathering? A day to share stories, to celebrate all our lost loved ones?" Jake's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. "That would be incredible. Imagine all the people who would come, bringing flowers and stories." And so they set their plans into motion. They circulated the idea through social media and local community groups, inviting anyone and everyone to partake in the event, a memorial day honoring those remembered. As the day approached, Emily felt a mixture of excitement and trepidation, the weight of emotion looming over her. But she was determined to create a space where people could share their love and loss together. Finally, the day arrived. A soft breeze danced through the cemetery as families gathered, bringing flowers, photographs, and cherished memories. Emily stood in front of the group, nervous but resolute as she prepared to speak. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "Today is not just about sorrow, it's about celebrating the lives that shaped us." The crowd murmured in agreement, their eyes flickering with emotion. As stories began to unfold, tales of love, laughter, and loss, the atmosphere transformed. Laughter intertwined with tears, creating an unexpected tapestry of shared experiences, weaving souls together in solidarity. As Emily listened to the outpouring of stories from others, some heartfelt, some humorous, she felt the walls surrounding her heart begin to crumble. The empty grave, once a painful reminder, was now a vivid testament to life and connection. The daisy stood proudly, surrounded by a kaleidoscope of blooms laid by those who came to honor their own loved ones. Flowers of all colors, sizes, and shapes filled the air with hope and tranquility, solidifying the sense of community they had created together. At the end of the gathering, as golden sunlight began to wane, Emily turned to Jake, tears glistening in her eyes. "Thank you for believing in me. And you should be proud of yourself," he said, his voice warm with admiration. "You brought everyone together." In that moment, standing amidst the flowers and stories, she realized Ben's presence was not confined to an empty grave. He thrived in the laughter shared, in the hearts that welcomed remembrance, and in the connections forged among everyone present. As dusk settled and the stars twinkled above, she whispered a quiet thanks to the universe, feeling a deep sense of peace envelop her. The journey of grief had transformed into a journey of love, a transition that promised healing, not just for her, but for everyone who had gathered. And as they all stood together in that sacred space, Emily understood a profound truth, that though loss is an undeniable part of life, love has the power to transcend it, brightening the path for those left behind. The empty grave, once a void, now echoed with laughter, memories, and the everlasting spirit of those who had lived and loved fiercely. Through shared stories and blooming flowers, she felt alive, ready to embrace whatever came next. And in the embrace of that community she knew together, they were crafting a future where sound touched the silence, where love flourished against the odds, and where every empty grave could be filled with hope. He found her there, kneeling beside a gravestone, her fingers intertwined in the grass, softly pulling out the weeds. The sun was sinking low, a fiery orb casting warm hues across the graveyard. Shadows stretched like whispers among the tombstones, filling the air with an uneasy stillness. She was alone, her movements slow and deliberate, as if she were crafting something sacred out of nothingness. Curiosity pulled at him, a magnetic force that made him push through the wrought iron gate. As he stepped into the cemetery, he took in the scene, the weighty silence, the ancient stones, the faint rustle of leaves in the breeze. He hesitated, unsure if he should intrude upon her solitude, but something about her drew him in a sense of quiet strength mixed with palpable sorrow. He moved closer, heart pounding. She was tending to several graves, each adorned with flowers, tokens of love and memory. But there in the very center was one grave that stood empty, marked only by a rough-hewn stone. He asked softly, his curiosity breaking the silence like a stone skipping across a still pond. She looked up, startled, her eyes revealing a depth of emotion that made him swallow hard. "I come here every week," she said, her voice steady but layered with grief. She gestured broadly, encompassing the row of gravestones before her gaze landed on the empty one. He stepped closer, drawn to the void in the earth. He inquired gently, wanting to unravel the mystery clinging to her words. Her expression faltered, and for a heartbeat the air around them thickened. "This is my brother's grave," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. He asked, the question weighing on his tongue. She sighed heavily, as if the weight of her sorrow bore down on her chest. "He died when he was young. No one wanted to put his memory here." She touched the unmarked stone delicately, as if apologizing for its emptiness. "I wanted a place to remember him." He pressed, desperation mingling with curiosity. "Eli," she whispered, tears swelling in her eyes. "Eli was a dreamer, full of energy and hope. He had this incredible spirit, everyone loved him. But one day while we were playing, he—" "I'm so sorry," he said, feeling the punch of her grief hit him like a wave. "Unbearable," she echoed, her voice trembling. "Every time I come here, I talk to him. I keep this grave as a promise." A soft breeze swept through the cemetery, and the branches of the old oak trees swayed overhead, almost as if they were leaning in to listen. "Have you ever thought about putting a marker here?" he asked, feeling the urge to help her fill that void. Her eyes widened, and for a moment hope flickered across her face. But then doubt crept back in, clouding her thoughts. What if it makes it too real? This emptiness feels comfortable. He countered gently. "You could carry him with you in memory." The tension in the air grew thicker between them, and for a heartbeat the world seemed to pause. Taking a deep breath, she whispered, "Maybe you're right." As they spoke, the sun dipped lower, casting an ethereal golden glow over the graveyard that danced across their faces. The warmth seemed to breathe life into the stillness. "Let's get a flower for this space," he suggested, his mind lighting up with possibilities. With a flicker of determination, she nodded. Yes, a flower. Days later, they found themselves wandering through the local flower shop, the rich aroma of earth and blooms wrapping around them like a comforting blanket. Emily ran her fingers across the petals, each one whispering promises of life and color. They finally settled on a vibrant sunflower, a symbol of loyalty and adoration. "That's perfect," Emily said, her eyes lighting up. He always said sunflowers reminded him of the sun and how it follows its path in the sky. They planted the sunflower at the foot of the empty grave, working together to shape the earth around it. With every handful of soil, Emily felt lighter, as if she were shedding layers of grief that had clung to her for years. She stood back, admiring their work, her heart swelling with renewed hope. "Eli is here now," she whispered, wiping away tears as she beamed at the sunflower. As weeks turned into months, the sunflower blossomed, its bright yellow petals stretching toward the sky. Emily visited often, her spirit brightening with each visit, each story shared. But there were days when loneliness seeped in, clouds obscuring her joy. The shadows of doubt would return, whispering fears that maybe Eli would be forgotten, that the love she felt could be overshadowed by time. One evening, she sat on the ground beside the sunflower, feeling the cool breeze brush against her face. The sky blushed pink and orange, the day slowly melting away. She felt the familiar heaviness settle over her heart. She finally admitted to Jake, who sat a few paces away, quietly watching her. "Love doesn't fade," he said, his voice gentle yet firm. "It transforms. You carry him with you in every story you tell, every flower you plant." She pondered his words, comforted yet still gripped by fears of forgetting. But what if the memories fade? Her voice trembled with the weight of emotion. "Then we will make new memories to add to the old ones," he said. "This grave can be more than just a reminder of loss." His words sparked a flicker of hope within her. What if we invite others? Other people who have lost someone special. We could create a gathering here. Jake replied, his enthusiasm infectious. Filled with excitement, Emily set about organizing the gathering, reaching out to neighbors and friends, inviting them to share in the celebration. As the day approached, Emily felt a mixture of nerves and anticipation, a sense of purpose that sparked energy within her. Finally, the day arrived. The The sun shone bright, casting its golden glow over the cemetery as people began to gather. Laughter filled the air, mingling with the sweet scent of blooming flowers. Emily stood at the front, her heart racing as she took in the scene. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. As stories and laughter filled the space, Emily felt the burden of her grief lift, replaced by connection and community. Each tale shared was a thread woven into the fabric of love that bound them together. But despite the vibrant atmosphere, a shadow lurked beneath the surface, something dark and unresolved. As the sun dipped lower, Emily glanced at Jake, a flicker of concern crossing her features. She whispered, fear creeping back. "You have already created something beautiful," he assured her, looking deep into her eyes. The day wound down, and as darkness settled in, something caught Emily's eye. Beside the sunflower, among the other flowers that had been laid, a small, shimmering object lay partially buried in the soil. She knelt down, heart racing, brushing away the dirt and revealing a small locket. It glinted in the fading light, pulsating with an energy that felt almost alive. She murmured, sliding her fingers over the surface. With deft movements, she opened the locket, and a rush of memories flooded her mind. Inside were two tiny pictures. One was of her brother, a younger Eli with a radiant smile and bright eyes, and the other, a face she didn't recognize. She took a sharp breath, confusion and question swirling in her mind. "Jake, look, there's a photo of Eli here, but the other." Jake leaned in closer, squinting in the dim light. The realization washed over her, an unsettling sensation creeping up her spine. She didn't know the face, but something about the eyes felt familiar. It was as if they held untold stories of their own, a secret waiting to be uncovered. Emily's voice quivered, the weight of the moment pressing down on her like a storm gathering before a deluge. Jake looked at her, concern flickering in his gaze. "We need to find out," he urged, his voice filled with determination. With her heart racing, she clutched the locket in her palm, feeling the warmth of the metal against her skin. The sun may have set, but a new adventure was dawning, a journey not just through memories, but through uncharted territory that held the promise of truths hidden in the shadows. As darkness enveloped them, Emily knew she couldn't turn back. The empty grave was no longer a mere place of remembrance. It had transformed into a portal of discovery, a space that beckoned her deeper into the heart of her brother's story, where unanswered questions collided with love and longing. The wind seemed to respond, rustling the leaves around them, signaling that this was only the beginning.